Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. I want to do a retake on my scalloped fretboard. I had a little bit of a tiny bit of an error right at the end of that last video, and then in thinking about it, there is a better way of doing it. So to start with, I'm going to go up here to the utilities, and there's an add-in that I've added in here called the fret generator. This one is from Audio Hotshots, and you can find it on GitHub, I think. And it does not come with Fusion360. You'll have to add it in yourself. But what it does is makes a static sketch for you. It's in millimeters, but if you just type in the inch sign, it will do the conversion for you. So 635 millimeters, that's fine. That's 25 inches, 24 frets. I want to change this width around here. I'm going to go 3 inches. Didn't get the inch in there. Inches. There we go. Click OK on that. I'm going to head over to this sketch we just made. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to rename this my fret gen. And then I'm going to right click on it again and edit the sketch. I'm going to trim these tails off back here. If you don't have the trim tool up here, go down here into your menu and find the trim tool. You can see you can just hit the T key on your keyboard, or if you press these 3 little points right here, you can see you have an option to pin it up here if you want to. So I'm going to trim these long tails off the sides. I'm going to escape out of that tool. I'm going to click on the center line and delete it with my delete key. Oh, see, that happens too sometimes in this program. See how it changed to this selector? Don't know why it does that either, but it does sometimes. So go back up here and go back to my window select. I'm going to select all of this and delete that as well. Then I'm going to left drag, and I'm going to right click and move copy. This set pivot point, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to hover over this big point right here and click right there. And then you have to go back over here and click here again, or up here, either one, to set that point. And now I'm going to rotate that 180 because I like to look at it this way, and click OK to that. All these lines are blue. All of the points are white. That means this has no constraints. You can move any of these lines anywhere you want. You can move any dot around. You can do whatever you want to anything, and that's no good for parametric drawing. So I'm going to Control Z out of that, and instead of trying to add constraints to make it all stable and locked down over here, I'm just going to drag select all of it and hit this big red lock right there. Now you can see this red lock over here, and it's all green. Good to go. I'm going to escape out of that. Now I want to draw a sketch down here at this nut end. So what I'm going to do now is go to my solids menu, and I'm going to go to this plane at angle, and yours is probably down here in the menu somewhere. Plane at angle. Now it wants to know what line do you want to use to create this plane. And I'm going to create the plane right here on this nut line. And right now it's at 0 degrees, but I want this to be 90 degrees from the nut. Just like that. Now we have the construction plane over here that we just made. And I will call that the nut, because my nut plane. Now I want to create a sketch on that plane. You can either right click on the plane, or you can right click over here. It doesn't matter. Create sketch. And now I'm going to use what's called project, and you go up here to create, and down here project include, and over to project, and you can see you can just hit the P key on your keyboard. Now how this project works is that your sketch is on this plane right here, and if you hover over anything that's visible back here, you can see where it's going to show up on this plane. Inside of this sketch, you can see where it's going to show up. It is going to come straight to this sketch. So if you had another plane over here with something drawn on it, you could still project it, but it's going to come straight up to meet this plane, perpendicular to this plane, not the plane you drew from. Just so you understand the way that works. And the other thing is this project link right here. If this is toggled, you won't be able to readily manipulate it once it is projected into the sketch. For instance, I want to project in just this little dot right here. Click on that dot, click OK to that projection, and now I'm going to turn off that fret gen. I'm going to look straight on at this sketch, and here's my little dot, and I can't, even if I can't do anything with that dot. It's stuck. It won't move at all, and the reason is it is linked to the sketch that it came from. So if I wanted to move it, I could go back to this sketch, edit that sketch, and move it in the original sketch, and it will parametrically move in the sketch we're designing now. Or the other way of doing it is to select it, right click, and you get this option here to break link, and then you can move it around like that. But I don't want it to move. I want it to be stuck on that first sketch. In case I change something on the first sketch, the rest of my sketches will follow along with it as it's supposed to. Okay, I'm going to look straight on from the right side on this. Now the first thing I want to do is hide this nut plane so I'm not seeing that. Now I want to draw my radius at the nut. So I'm going to go to Create and a circle, a 2-point circle. I'm going to click on this and start heading straight down. You'll know you're going straight when it turns into a blue dashed line. And then without clicking, I'm going to type in my diameter. If you got some weird radius you're going with and you can't do the diameter math in your head, well, Fusion will do the math for you. You can just type, for a 12-inch radius, I can type 1, 2, and then the little star button for times 2, and hit enter on that, and that'll give you my 12-inch radius. Next thing I want to do is draw a line up here anywhere, and this will be the width of your nut. Mine is 1.7 inches just for convenience. Hit enter on that. Now you can see that is not locked down, so I'm going to click on that line, and I am going to use this midpoint constraint right here. I'm going to click on the constraint, and then where do you want to constrain it? I want to constrain the midpoint of that line to this point right here. And there you go, just like that. I'm going to escape out of that tool. Now I'm going to go up here. Now I want the sides of this fretboard, both here at the nut and back towards the heel, to be a 1/4 inch thick on the sides, even all the way down the side of a 1/4 inch. That way the scallops will all look even, and also that leaves a little extra room under the scallops to put in normal sized fret markers. It does make a little bit thicker fretboard that you have to compensate for somewhere. So I'm going to draw my line tool. You can click on the line tool, or you can just hit the L button on or the L key. Now I'm not clicking here, I'm just hovering on this point and then just moving my mouse down, and you'll see that dashed line comes in. That tells you you're perpendicular to this line right here. And then when you meet another line, that little X comes up, and you can click the first time right there, and that starts your line. And I'm just moving my mouse down, make sure it stays 90 degrees to that first line, and then I'm just typing in 0.25 and hit enter. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Line tool, hover, move your mouse, click, start moving straight down, type 0.25, enter. There you go. Now we don't need this line anymore. I'm going to click on this line and delete it. And I'm going to use my trim tool and trim off the big part of the circle over here. And I'm going to go back to my line tool and run a line across the bottom, point to point, and then one more line in the center. Whoops, I missed that, didn't I? One more line in the center, like that. Now you see we have two pieces here. We don't want that. We want the whole thing to hold water. So if you click on the center line, hit the X key, that will just for one instance turn the line into a construction line, as you can see over here. Whereas if you were to actually click this button and do it, the next line you draw would also be a construction line. You'd have to go back over here and turn it off again. Okay, now I want to go ahead and drag select all of that and lock it all down here. Make sure we're locked over here. I'm going to finish that sketch, and let's see, I need to right click and I'm going to rename that the nut. Now what I want to do is go to this parametric view by clicking on this little home button over here. And if you're not aware of how the cube works, wherever you grab the cube, if you drag it around, click, hold, and drag, you can rotate things around. Or if you click on any highlighted face, it will move directly to that exact position. So what I want to do now is create an offset plane. It's this button right here. And now it wants to know from where. And I want to do it from the nut. I'm going to just click right here on this nut plane. And now it wants to know how far and what direction. I want to move in a negative direction. So it'll be negative, and then scale length is 25 inches. Hit enter on that. And now we have a new plane back here. I'm going to call the bridge. And I can go ahead and hide that plane. And I'm going to right click on this bridge. I want to create a sketch here too. Now you'll see I left my nut on. And what I'm going to do is project in, hit the P key, this center line right here, and just click OK to that, and then I can turn off this nut, and we'll go ahead and make that a construction line as well, like that. Now I'm going to draw a line. This line will be the distance from E string to E string on your bridge, from E string saddle to E string right at the slots. Plus you need some wiggle room on both sides so you can do bends and vibrato and stuff on your notes, pull-offs and stuff without falling off the fretboard. So usually about 0.18 on each side is what I go for a total of 0.36. So I'm going to just draw a line. So from E string to E string is 2.08 on my bridge, and then I'm going to say plus, I could just say 0.36, but if you're not good at math, you can just say plus however much you want on each side. So it's like plus 0.18 plus 0.18, like that. Whatever math you need to use to get it done, and hit enter. So you'll see this is not fully constrained. It's still blue and white, but this is locked down right here. So if we once again just pick this line and do a midpoint constraint and constrain it to this point right here, now we have that sketch locked down. I'm going to escape out of that tool. Go ahead and name this while I'm looking at it. I'm going to call this the bridge. Now here's where we can determine that our fretboard is going to be an even thickness along the side. So all the way back at the bridge, we're going to add lines here, and these lines also are going to be 0.25 inches. Hit enter on that. L for line. 0.25, enter. And then for the radius back here, all we need to do is create a arc, 3-point arc. And there again you go with span, so it's from this point to this point, and then the radius will be to this point right here. So there we have that part. And just so it's not confusing, or hopefully not as confusing, I'm going to go ahead and finish that sketch, and I'm going to turn this nut back on. I'm going to go to the home perspective view, and I'm going to go ahead and do a loft right here with this tool. Make sure there's nothing in here. If there's anything in here at all, go ahead and highlight it and hit the X to get rid of it. And we're going to loft from this profile to this front profile. Make sure it says new body and click OK. So there's our fretboard proper. And I'm going to hide that. No point to name it right now because I'm going to make some changes to it, and the naming conventions get kind of seems like to me the naming conventions goes the wrong way. I start with the piece I want to keep, but then when I make changes to it, it gives my original name to the second part that was created. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong with that. But anyway, I don't name them until I get it closer to where I want it. Now what I'm going to do is turn off this nut. I'm going to go back to this bridge sketch. I'm going to edit the sketch. Now you remember that the fret generated line was 3 inches long. So I'm going to create another line shorter than 3 inches but longer than 2.44, which is this line down here is 2.4 right here, 2.44. So I want a line that's in between those distances. So I'm going to draw a line down here, and I'm going to make it 2.75. And once again, I'm going to constrain it to that same bottom point. So I'm going to click on the line, midpoint, constraint to this point right here. And now what I want to do is extend this arch to where it would normally die into this line over here. So we need to draw a little line over here to get it started. From this point straight up, hit enter, and then use my extend tool, hover. You see the red line it's going to draw, and click there, and then hover on this one down here and click here. And then the same thing on this side over here. Draw a line, get it started straight up, hit enter, and then extend top, extend side. That. Okay. And it's still all locked down, so we can finish that sketch, hide this fret, hide the bridge, and right click and edit the nut. And actually what we can do on the nut is turn this, oh, we can't see that anymore. Should have done the nut first actually, because I can't see my bridge because it was created after the nut. At any rate, no big deal. I will create it that same line down here, same distance, I keep hitting that 0. Okay, 2.75. And same thing, click on the line and midpoint constrain it to here. And escape out of that, and then just do the rinse and repeat here. So small line on this side, enter, escape, and then we'll extend here and here. Okay, make sure it's all still locked. It is, and finish that sketch. So now when we turn back on the bridge and the nut, go back to the home perspective view. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to loft again, make sure that it's all clear over here. Now this time you'll notice as we pick here, here, and here, it all stays as one profile because it's all connected and it's on the same plane, in the same sketch rather. And then we can click this button, add a profile, and scroll up here to this nut and do the same thing up here to this nut. And so that's the second profile. And make sure it's new body and click OK. So all of this, or actually just this part of it, the only reason I had to create this was to get this point right here and this point right here, because I certainly do not have the first idea of how to do the math to figure out where those points need to be. So I have to create this whole thing to get those 2 points so that my scallops will work out correctly, because they have to be touching, everything has to be touching one another or things won't work. Alright, so now we have these two bodies, and what I want to do is cut these to length, and for that length I'm going to go up here to offset plane. And it wants to know offset from where. I'm going to offset from the nut, and I'm going to go ahead and turn these bodies off for the moment, turn all this off, and turn on my fret gen sketch. I'm going to offset in a negative direction. I'm going to roll up on this 45-degree mark right here so I can see it better. And my negative direction will be just past my 24th fret back here, however much fretboard you want to see back here to your 25th position. So mine's going to be a negative 19 inches. Hit enter, I'm there. Now this plane I'm going to call the split plane. And that's exactly what we're going to do with it. I'm going to turn this sketch off. I'm going to turn on these two bodies again. I'm going to hide the split plane. And I'm going to use this tool right here, split body. Now instead of trying to select down here because they're both turned on, I'm just going to go right over here. I'm going to select, first of all I'm going to make sure that this blue selection is highlighted, meaning it's ready to make a selection. I'm going to select this body, and while it's still highlighted I'm going to select this body. Now you can see I have two selected, and I'm going to switch now. I'm going to select the splitting tool, will be this split plane right here, will be the splitting tool. When you click OK on that, we now have four bodies over here. Turn all those off and we'll turn them on one at a time. This little piece we don't need anymore. But you'll notice if you right click and you just try to delete that, you get this associated features will fail warning, and you need to heed this. Unless you absolutely for sure know what you're doing, don't go past this kind of an error, because it will come back and bite you in a bitter kind of way. It needs, I'm going to cancel that, the entire project needs something from this. And it will usually tell you later on what it needs, what's missing, and where it thinks that part is. It will continue to draw the sketch, remembering where it used to be. But if you move anything parametrically, everything's going to go south on you real fast. So you can't just delete these parts. But what they have done now is a newer feature is you can remove it right here. And in removing it, it shows up in the timeline, which is another hand. It's really actually handy to have it, because sometimes in making tool paths or something, it'd be, wow, I wish I had that other part that I threw away, because I could really use that right now to make this tool path work easier. Well, you can just simply go down here and right click and suppress the removal, and it comes back. But it doesn't really affect the rest of the drawing. So it's kind of nice to have this feature. Before they didn't have this remove on here, and you had to actually do a join feature and cut the other piece away, which still left the join feature down here. It still didn't remove it. It's doing the same thing. But at any rate, I digress. So this one too, we're going to right click and remove it. And now we just have the two parts that I want. Let's see here, this one, this is the negative blank here, so I'm just going to right click and rename this to negative, or maybe the blank, or how about the neg blank. And this one is the actual fretboard proper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and Control S right here and go ahead and save the project before I forget and have something go haywire on me. And this is the scalloped fretboard. Okay, next thing I want to do is get my fret positions down here. So I'm going to turn this neg back on, this blank right here, and I'm going to turn on my fret generator, and I want to create a new sketch from right here. And this needs to be either on the same sketch that the fret generator is on, or one parallel to that. You can't use any kind of offset plane for this. The sketch needs to be done on a plane that is parallel to this generator, or your intonation is going to be off. So for this, we're going to use this feature under Create, Project Include, down here to project a surface. And the first thing it's looking for is the face that you want to project to. Let me turn off this fret gen here, and that's this compound radius face right here. And then you need to go over here and tell it you want to make a selection for the curves. I'm going to turn off this solid body, and I'm going to turn the fret gen back on. Makes it a little bit easier to see. I'm going to go to a top-down view, and I'm going to select the 24 frets or positions, 24 fret positions. Like that, and click OK for that sketch and finish the sketch. Roll this up a little bit so we can take a look. So this is going to be called the slots. Okay, let's see. We are ready to make our scallop profile. And to do that, I am going to, let's see, turn off this sketch. I'm going to turn back on my blank right here. And I'm going to create a sketch, and you want to create it on one of these thin sides here. It doesn't matter top or bottom, like that. Now if I turn this blank back off again, you'll see all this ghosting stuff's in here. There is an option over here somewhere to turn that off, somewhere in these preferences, I think. Not sure where. So I'm just going to drag select all of that and hit my delete button on my keyboard to get rid of all that ghosted stuff. And I'm going to turn back on my my slot sketch here, and I'm going to rotate it up to a 45-degree angle. It's this little guy right there. And now I'm going to hit the P key and project in all these lower points right here. Just like that. Click OK to that. And you can turn off the slots and go to a straight on view right here. Okay. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to create the little portion of the fretboard that actually is the little shells that the frets actually sit on. So everything except the scalloped areas. So I'm going to drag select all of this. I'm going to go up here to create and rectangular pattern. Now the first thing it wants to know is a distance right here. And the distance it wants to know is or the distance we need to give it is approximately half of the width of your frets. So for my jumbo frets, they are a total of 0.104 wide. That's how fat they are. So just for instance, say they were 1.05. I want to add a little bit to both sides so that my fret edges aren't dangling over the scallops into the abyss. You know, you want a little bit of wood exposed on both sides of the fret, so I'm just going to say 1.1 or 0.11. So half of that will be 0.055. So 0.055 is that distance. Now if you scroll in and take a look, it has created 3. There's a number 3, and they're all to one side. So here's the original, and it created 2 extra ones to the right side. So if we go over here, the direction right here, we can change that direction to symmetric. Now it's 1 on each side. We can just click OK to finish that. And now it should be 1.1 or 1.11 from here to here. So if you click on that line, you can see down here it's 0.11 inches. So this needs to be a little bit fatter than your frets. I'm going to get rid of that line. Now all these center dots here aren't going to be used anymore. You can get rid of them all if you wanted to, just so they're not, you know, a hazard that you might trip over. What I want to do now is turn back on this blank right here and project in. Let me turn it so you can see. I want to project in just this point right here. Basically the points of the fretboard here. And this point right here, like that. Okay. And then I'm going to turn that blank back off. Now the fret's going to be sitting right here, and the scallop's going to start right here. And since this is from the nut, this will not have a scallop in here. So we can go ahead and select these two and delete them, and then run a straight line from the nut to the first scallop, and I'm going to escape out of that. And we can do that same thing back here in the back. These won't be used. Can delete that, and we're going to run the line from the end of the fretboard here all the way up to where the first scallop starts. And if you double click, it will let go, but you still have the tool. And now you need to fill in all of these little shelf areas. Let's go ahead and give a little bit of height to this. Draw another line right here. And this one just start heading straight up. And it doesn't have to be very big, so I'm just going to do a 0.15 on that. Enter there. And go back down to the nut and do the same thing. Draw a line. Now this is moving away from the fretboard, so don't be alarmed. 0.15 here. And then I want to connect those two lines from here to here, like that. Okay, so now I want to draw another line here. It's coming straight down this time. You see all this weird stuff that's happening in here? I don't know why it does this, but it does it every single time. And if I were to just click right here, it would draw the line on top, not on the bottom. I don't know why. But I'll show you how to get around it if it's doing it on your computer. This is the thickness of your scallops. So I'm going to do a 0.05. Instead of just hitting enter though, just wiggle it around a little bit and wiggle it first and then hit enter, and then the line will come to the bottom. It's a weird thing. It's just one of those things with Fusion360. I'm not sure why that happens, but it always does in these particular drawings. So I'll draw a line here, start it here, head down this direction, 0.05, wiggle, 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 hit enter, and then go ahead and run a line between those as well. And then we'll click on, oh, come on, get out of there. And then we'll click on this line and hit the X key to make it a construction line. You want to always leave this line on here. If you decide your scallops are too deep or too narrow or too shallow, you can move this line up and down and move all of the scallops. Now bear in mind that it is constrained on both sides to 0.05. So to do that, you would actually have to change the height on both ends to make it even. Now for these scallops, they're pretty simple. Just do a create arc, 3-point arc, and then you just span, and then go down here and wait till it rolls into the tangent like that, and click there. Okay, so here in this last one, it should close everything up. But it did not. This should all turn blue in here. And this was a deliberate mistake I left in here just to show you guys how to do this in case you don't already know. So you say, well, where in the heck did I go wrong with all these connections in here? How do I figure this one out? Well, what you're looking for is a white dot where all these are black, and then they are connected and they're all solid. So you're looking for a white one. However, if the error is very, very minute, it's almost impossible to see that white dot. So you say, well, how do I figure this out? And it's pretty simple, actually. So you turn on your line tool. Now if you don't double click between moves, it will chain. So if I click here to start the line, I go up here and click, you still see it's still chained together. If you look over here, this is shaded in blue. So this is now closed back here. So the problem is not back here. This is all still white, so it's still not closed. So let's go over here and click. Aha. See, now it's all blue over here, but now it's white. So here, somewhere in here is the problem. So I can escape out of that tool, and I could just go on and on and on, running lines until I find where it doesn't close itself. So we scroll in here. Now we're looking for that little white dot. So it's a much smaller area to look for. Well, let's just do one more line right down the middle here, see how that goes. So now we made it even smaller, so now we only have to look at 2 places. And there she blow right there. Now this was deliberate, just so you can see how to do this. But sometimes I get in a hurry, and this is how I learned this, and I don't connect as I should, and it leaves these little gaps that are almost impossible to see when you're out here at normal size. Well, because I did this, I know which of these values is wrong. I know this line is incorrect, and I know this point is where it's supposed to be. But you would have to determine that. It's such a minute thing, it probably wouldn't make a bit of difference. You would probably never even notice it. But then again, it's fretwork, so you may notice it. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this line and delete it. And I'm going to draw that line in there again. From here to here, and that closed everything in. And then for sanity, I'm going to click on that line and check it to make sure it is exactly 0.11 inches. So that all looks good, and get rid of these other lines here. And now we can go ahead and finish and name this the scallop profile. Whoop, I never locked it, did I? And we definitely need to lock this one. See, while this is highlighted, you can't edit. You lose all your features. And see, I'm clicking here, and I clicked on something else, and I clicked on something, and it just stays highlighted forever. I'm not sure why it does that, but it's not the first time. I know how to get rid of it. Just do that. Boom, boom, and it went away. Now if I right click, I can edit sketch. Another little weird thing. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and grab everything. Make sure you get these dots in here too, because these are your radius points or diameter points. And I'm going to lock all that down and finish that sketch. Now here's where I'm going to do something a little bit different than the last time. Last time what I did was I put my slots on like this, and I went up here to this create, and I made a sweep. And in that sweep, we changed from a single path to a path and a guide rail. It wants to know a profile, so I picked this profile. And then it wants to know a path. Say, okay, I'll put it on this path right here. And then it wants to, and then I'm going to go here to select a guide. I'm going to use this as a guide. And click OK on that. And hide all these sketches. And there you have it. Now, depending on which ones you pick first, you may have a line running through the center, and other things could happen. But the gist of it is, at this point, this is our new negative right here, so we can get rid of this blank over here and remove that. Like I say, I only needed it for those 2 points. And then turn this fretboard on. You can see the fretboard hiding under there. And then we can do a combine, and just the target will be the fretboard, and the tool body will be this body right here. Now you see it's trying to join them together. Instead, we'll go here to a cut, and do not keep the tool, and OK. Now this happened last time as well, and I'm not sure why. I know what's going on. For some reason, it's not exactly touching the 2 parts. The fretboard and the negative were not exactly touching out here in the centers for some reason, and you can see it's very symmetrical in these little areas that didn't really touch well, and it goes all the way down the whole fretboard like that. I don't know why, but I do know how to fix it. So what we're going to do is undo this. We're going to come down here and delete this last function here, and I'm going to turn off this fretboard, and I'm going to right click on this body 5 or whatever yours is called, and I'm going to move it. Look at it straight on, and I'm going to click on this so I can only move it in 2 directions, and I'm going to start moving it down, and then I'm going to type in the value of -0.001. Enter. I'm just moving it down every tiny bit, so slightly, and now do that combine move, and they disappear. Don't know why that's happening. The tolerance, I think I set it up for higher tolerance than that, but anyway, that's how you can fix it. And there's a perfectly scalloped fretboard. You can verify that by turning back on your slots and just making sure these are where your frets are going to be inserted, and just take a look at those things on both ends, because if there is an error, it will graduate from one end to the other. So just make sure they're right dead center, which they are. And that's one way of doing it. Now another way to do that, I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete that move we made. Okay, so if we go to a straight on view here, select all that and copy, and then close that. Let's turn this blank back on. Now this time we're going to swing back around to the top side of it, and we're going to create another sketch on this edge right here, so it's the opposite side. I'm going to get rid of all this ghosted stuff here, and I need this one point projected in right here. Okay on that, and hide that. Okay, I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to paste that guy in. Now if we turn on the previous scallop profile, you can see they are lined up. It's just that it came in on the opposite side because we turned around. We're looking at it from the other side, so all we have to do is pivot this thing around. So we'll go to the top view here. We need to set a new pivot point to this leading point out here. Click on it and then set it, and now just flip that around 180 and click OK on that, and finish that sketch. Scallop profile, and now we're going to do a loft. So if we turn back on our slots and do a loft from this profile to this profile, and then we just need to add rails, will be this rail and the last one back here, and this rail, new body. Okay, hide all this stuff. So it's a little extra work, but sometimes it'll get you out of trouble to do a loft instead. Many instances whenever I was doing the rail or the sweep, I ended up with a line going down the center of this thing, and also these two edges, one of them was slanted out like this and the other one was perfectly straight. Some different things happen when you do sweep as versus doing the loft. So you can do it either way, whatever works for you. And then once again, we don't need this negative body anymore, so I'm going to remove that one, and the new negative right here. And we want to right click on that and move it, and we want to move it straight down. Negative. Actually, let's just check it before we move it and see if the loft works any better, and do a combine fretboard minus blank. Nope, still in there. Actually, it's better. It's better. It's 2/3 better lofting. So I'm going to undo all that, or undo the loft rather, and then I'm going to right click, move this body in this direction, negative value, negative 0.0001, and then do a combine fretboard blank cut. Oh, didn't get it all. So now what I'm going to do is go back over here, and I'm going to actually just delete this and delete this, and then I'm going to hide the fretboard and go ahead and move this. Right click and move copy, and I'm going to move it again a little bit more this time, negative 0.001. Enter on that, and now do our combine move. And there you go. So anyways, it's kind of long-winded, and I do tend to ramble and run around in circles sometimes, but in the end we get it done. Okay, I'll show you guys something right here that'll save you a ton of headache. If I turn this blank back on here and I roll up on the top view and I turn on my slots, you can see these slots go all the way to the edge, and the reason they went all the way to the edge is because this distance between this blank is 2.75, but the fret generator was 3 inches. So everything that went over the edge got cut off. All these fret lines that went over, all these generated lines that went over the edge of the blank got cut off. What would happen though if you said, okay, I've got a 3-inch wide board in my fret generator, so I will create a 3-inch wide neck blank. Well, that would be catastrophe, and you'd have to do it all again, and here's why. When you project this line down, it arcs the 3-inch line. It doesn't add any length to it. It just bends it. And so what would happen is this 3-inch line will no longer fit between a 3-inch space that has an arc in the top of it, because this arc is longer than 3 inches now, if you understand what I'm saying. So do be aware of that when you project a line onto a surface, the line stays the same length, but it's going to wrap on the surface, so it's not going to be as long from point to point anymore. Hope you can understand that. But yeah, so that's why you need to have plenty of overhang on your fret generator. You need to have some overhang over your blank, and then it will just cut everything right to this edge. Because what would happen is, if this were 3 inches, these arcs would not come all the way to the sides. There'd be little tiny gaps on both sides, and so when you try to loft or when you try to sweep, you'll get an error because it's not connected on both sides. Anyway, be careful with that, and don't forget to save your work. Alright guys, hope that helps. You guys take care, and God bless.